Welcome to the Pit Stop Podcast, a show dedicated to providing a closer look at an emerging Magic the Gathering micro-format, Pauper 5-card blind. If Pauper is indeed a format where restriction breeds creativity, then 5CB ultimately exemplifies this concept into its most basic and purest form by leaving sideboards and libraries behind entirely. This podcast is made possible by the many maniacs on the Topdeck Lethal Discord server who continue to participate, share their designs, and further the discussion of card interaction. That is to say, the content created here is made by the Pauper community and for the Pauper community, and will always be free. If you like what we're doing, consider subscribing to the Topdeck Lethal YouTube channel and joining our community on Discord to keep updated on all things Pauper. Today, I'm speaking with two of our regular 5CB Derby contenders and top event finishers, who helped me provide a closer and more visual look at how this format works, as well as the incredible architecture behind the 5-card Pauper deck. With that, I bring you our conversation. As always, I'm Topsy for Topdeck Lethal, and this is the Pit Stop. Welcome everyone to the very first episode of the Pit Stop, where we're going to dive a little bit deeper into our micro format of Pauper 5CB, or 5-card blind, and jam some 5-card Pauper lists against one another. But before we do that, let's meet two of our 5CB maniacs and today's guests on the show. I'd like to first introduce LuckyScum, who finished top 5 in Derbies 4 and 5 in Season 1 of our 5CB event, as well as took 6th place in the Grand Prix last month. LuckyScum is also the creator of Mother Brain, which is a Discord bot currently brooding around the Topdeck Lethal Discord server and helping with scorekeeping and running matchups for the 5CB Underground League. Lucky, it's great to have you aboard today. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, Topsy.
In the other corner, it's my pleasure to introduce Puermeus, who took 2nd place in Derby number 3 last season, as well as claimed a top 10 spot in the 5CB GP last month. Puermeus is also doing some great work with digital Pauper cube drafts and apparently a 5CB themed cube, which I'm personally excited to hear more about. Puermeus, thank you so much for being with us today, and welcome.
Hey, thanks very much.
Cool. Now, before we get started, how has this last week sort of been in the Pauper world for you guys? Have you been up to anything kind of specifically Pauper related in particular? Just kind of doing, I know you're doing the Derby stuff, but anything kind of stand out? Anything about the meta maybe you want to talk about?
Well, I know that Puermeus and I, we do a cube on the side together. So we have a specific Pauper cube that we do. Talking about the meta-wise, Puermeus, you probably know a bit more than I do about that since you're the one who designed the cube. Do you want to go in on any of that?
Yeah, thanks. So, general meta-wise, in regular Pauper, I've stepped away from the format for quite some time, just financial reasons. It's too hard to continue for me there. But getting in and working on this cube has been a really great way to stay in touch with the community and the format that I enjoy. And we've really been exploring what a cube environment would look like if it was designed with rarities in mind, with all the cards being legal in Pauper. So we've got mythics, rares, uncommons, commons, dictating how much of a card is available in the format, and fiddling with that has proved to be really engaging and creating a great draft and play environment for us so far. So that's been great.
Yeah, and I don't know how I've just heard about this, but I mean, it sounds absolutely rad. Can you tell me more about like the tools that you use? Is that something that you can sort of draft virtually, or like what's all needed for something like that?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. So to manage and update and keep track of everything on the cube, as well as look at some statistics, I've been using Cube Cobra as well as a homemade Excel spreadsheet in conjunction with each other. What one can't do, the other can, and it's been really good for managing it and upkeeping. As for drafting and engaging with those in the community that want to partake, we've been using an online platform, draft.io, I think it's what it's called.
It's a draft.info.
Okay, and the A in draft is a 4. and that's been working really well for us. It has the odd bug, obviously, but especially when you're stretched to different parts of the planet here with everyone in COVID, and you can't always go to your local game store. Being able to get together online and continue to have that community using these platforms has been fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. I am super excited to learn more about that, and potentially maybe we could do another type of segment where we can maybe show a little bit of that off, because that sounds like an awesome way to, just sort of as an aside to some of the derby stuff that we're kind of already doing for the format. So that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Of course.
All right, so we do have a couple of matchups today. For our viewers out there, what we're doing is each of our guests have submitted 3 separate 5-card lists. So we're gonna be running 3 matchups today. We're gonna smash them together. We're gonna talk a little bit about how the strategies work. We're gonna take it turn by turn and sort of give. I guess the goal ultimately is just sort of give a better idea of what we're trying to achieve, and hopefully sort of, just spread some of that excitement around, and hopefully get some more folks involved. So for, let's see, our first matchup, we did this randomly. We have a list called Feldon's Fisher, and that's going to be matched up against Court of the Crimson King. So, Mr. Scum, I have not seen this list yet. Tell us more about this Crimson King and his court. What are we doing here?
Well, first of all, that sounds great as a name, Mr. Scum. So, Court of the Crimson King. The way I designed it, I really tried to focus on how the meta was forming out. And right now, everyone is just gung-ho with creature removal. You see a lot of cards like Innocent Blood. It's super cheap. 1 black mana, force everyone to sack a creature. I take that and I said, okay, if everyone wants to keep removing my creatures, I won't play them. So the way I'm going about dealing damage then is using Curse of the Pierced Heart. It's pretty much a burn staple in Magic. And in conjunction with that, my other 3rd card, aside from lands, is Feldon's Cane. Feldon's Cane, incredible card in the format, introduced by Puermeus with this deck, Feldon's Fisher. I think it's probably round 3 of season 1, around then.
That's the one.
It in some ways has I won't say broken the format, but it basically allows you to double your deck size. Don't want to cast a spell just once, bring Feldon's Cane, and if anyone forces you to sack things, discard it, you can bring it all right back. And that was kind of my thought process on building this.
Yeah, I like it. It seems absolutely spicy. Lots of sort of interaction. You have kind of like this passive strategy to sort of take that life total down. So that is really interesting. Thank you for sharing your thoughts there. For the opposing list, you mentioned Feldon's Fisher being a part of a previous derby that's obviously seen some success.
Yeah, if I can hop in here, yeah.
Yeah. Puermeus, could you share some insight a little bit on the contents and I guess this sort of the strategy with this list that we've seen?
Definitely. So originally in the Discord, we were having a big discussion about some of the cards we wanted to play around with, people wanted to see Brood around, and Core Skyfisher and what's the name of the land here? Remote Farm came up as a nice little synergy because it resets the counters on the land, it counts for itself, and it allows you to play 1 land and still get your 2 mana spell out, which was really efficient. And so there was a lot of discussion going on around that. And then an old-time favorite of mine, which is Feldon's Cane. Couldn't tell you why I like it, I just thought it was neat. And it works really well in this format, as Lucky commented on there earlier, right? If anyone tries to disrupt your game plan, you can buy back anything you need to 1 time, which, as he said, effectively doubles the amount of cards that you have available to you. So by paying 2 of the most efficient threats in the Pauper format, in Core Skyfisher, only having to run land, and then a way to rebuy those threats if they manage to get discarded or destroyed in any way, I still give myself a lot of space in the list to find room for that necessary creature interaction that Lucky commented on. And that ended up settling on Oppressive Raise, and this interacted really favorably with the meta at the time because people were still really heavily exploring the idea of Reanimator, or how can I get one resilient threat through and keep it around. And so this kind of Oppressive Raise strategy stopped people from using their recursion effects by keeping their creature on the board but unusable. And so that worked out really well and kind of demonstrated the power of Felden's Cane. And as we go through today's set of pairings and lists, you'll see that I've brought 3 different Felden's Cane decks because I really wanted to demonstrate just the sheer variety that you can get while still having 1/5 of your deck being the same card because of how impressive this effect is.
That's awesome. I'm thoroughly looking forward to smashing these 2 lists together and kind of seeing what comes out on the other end. In terms of starting first, so obviously we're gonna run sort of best of 2 matches where each list is sort of going to be on the play first, which is how we do it sort of in the Derby. Is there any thoughts on, should we randomize this, or is there anyone that would like to be on the play first if we start this matchup?
I'm a gentleman. Puermeus, you can go first.
Well, you beat me to it, so I'm fine with that. If that's what you'd like to do here, I don't mind. And just for those at home listening today there, Topsy, should we maybe break down really quickly the rules of the Derby and how these matches are supposed to be played out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good call. So essentially the rules for the that we abide by in the 5CB Derby series is we make 5-card decks, and this is lands included, and so you have to be able to have the lands within those 5-card slots to allow for whatever your mechanism is going to be to sort of take your opponent down from 20 to 0. And so you craft a 5-card deck and submit it. And then what we do as far as matchups go is we play a best of, I guess it's not really a best of 2, but we're playing 2 matches, one with each list first on the play, since oftentimes it's pretty important, detrimental to the actual result with depending on which list is on the play first, right? And especially when it comes more to the combo oriented lists. So we play with open information, and we assume that the decks are playing with the most optimal plays. So in this way, we're not traditionally playing these decks sort of against one another, more so just kind of using it as a discussion piece and sort of, with some lists you can kind of take a look at them and just visually by your eye, you can tell which list is going to come out on top. Just kind of being objective and considering that those plays are the most optimal. But sometimes these lists can surprise you, and they're incredibly technical. And so something that I've kind of done in the past is using Moxfield to sort of run through games. And I thought that would be a cool thing to do today to sort of visually show how we do this. So we are going to break this down turn by turn as if you two are playing against each other, although that's not technically sort of the sort of format that we typically play on the server.
I was just going to say, so you might describe this as more of a puzzle format or a way to get the community discussing and brewing than necessarily playing actual rounds of Magic in real time, right? That's
absolutely correct. That's kind of where this started. We wanted to get some folks on the server just kind of more accustomed to one another and introduce some people, and it was sort of made as like an icebreaker to just kind of get some more interaction sort of on the forums, and creating little 5-card mini decks seemed like the perfect way to do that. And so far it's kind of blown up to become its own thing, and it's sort of on its way to mutating into its own sort of format, which is very exciting. So yeah, that's essentially how that works. And when it comes to scoring, if you can win a match or reduce your opponent's life total before they reduce yours, sort of as traditional typical Magic, you're going to get 3 points. And for any games that are sort of ending in a draw, where either the game stalemates or you're just not really able to get there, as far as reducing that life total, each player would be awarded with a point, or rather you gain a point. And then you don't get any points if you have lost the match. And so we're going to tally those things up traditionally for the Derby. I don't know. I guess this is sort of a micro Derby today. I don't know if we'll keep score. We'll definitely log the scores. Maybe we'll have to have a separate league just for some of these things. But obviously the point today is just to kind of give more of a visual flavor on kind of how this format kind of works for the normal derby. And I should also say sort of the sort of underground, which is sort of a 1v1 version of this derby that we also host on the server. Okay, so for the first matchup, we're gonna be on the play with Feldon's Fisher. So Puermeus, do you want to walk me through your first turn? How's this working?
Yeah, no problem, Topsy. So with Feldon's Fisher, your first turn is never going to change. It might given circumstances, but just looking at Lucky's list over there, I don't have to be worried about any kind of land destruction. There's no way he's really going to disrupt anything. Pretty cold cut. I'm going to get Remote Farm down tapped with 2 counters. And for those at home who don't know this card, I think it's from Arcadian Masks, and there's a whole set of 5 of them that each tap for 2 of a given color. And then when you tap them for those 2, it resets the counters. So that'll come into play in a couple turns here. But that's turn 1 for us.
Awesome. That's a great call out. I mean, these lands seem like they would be huge in a format like this where you're very limited on card slots. Just the opportunity, or the ability, I should say, to generate more lands is great. So that's really cool that you included that in this list here.
Yeah, and to build off that as well, it comes with a drawback too, right? Like I can't play a turn 1 spell right away, so for this efficiency that I gain of 1 land, I have that drawback in speed.
Totally. Well said. Okay, well let's move over to turn 2 here. We're gonna go with Lucky. What's your strategy for this first turn?
So for my first turn, I don't see that he has any artifact removal, any way to really interact with me. So I'm just going to play a swamp, and then I'm going to drop my Feldon's Cane.
Now I gotta ask.
Pass it back to him. Yeah.
I gotta ask, why the swamp over the mountain?
Shut up.
That's another aspect that we don't, keeping it on the Discord server, we don't have a lot of opportunities to sort of get in the opponent's head, right? So that sort of makes this sort of visual version of the derby very interesting to me. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, congrats, you're in my head already.
Wow, perfect information. That's going to help a lot today.
All right, cool. We're going to bounce back on over with Puermeus to Feldon's Fisher's second turn.
Great. So I'm not really going to get any value off my Oppressive Raise this game. And just judging by how much damage he's going to be able to do, how much damage I'm going to be able to do, he can probably kill 2 of my creatures, but I'm not too concerned right now, as we'll see how this plays out. So I'll remove a counter from the Remote Farm, get that first Skyfisher down, pick the Remote Farm up, and replay it, resetting the counters on it. So it's back to 2. So no matter what, I'm still going to be able to play out my core Skyfisher, as well as, if it were necessary, that 1 piece of interaction or my recursion piece. And with that, I am going to ship it back to LuckyScum over there.
Yeah, that's really interesting in terms of sort of that bounce effect from Skyfisher in conjunction with the depletion lands. I mean, that's like generating lots of mana over time. That's a really interesting play that I haven't built any lists that utilize that quite yet, so that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind when building, is the efficiency of different lands and how you can best utilize it. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues to evolve as we move forward with the Derby.
Absolutely. Okay, our next turn for Core of the Crimson King.
Optimal play here, drop the mountain, and as Puermeus said, you can already kind of see he's going to probably be able to outpace me just a little bit. So what I might try to do is try and get as much damage out as I can to start. So maybe we'll tap both of our lands and drop Curse to the Pierced Heart, try and start getting some damage on him. But because Puermeus likes to bring his old man cane everywhere, I don't think that this matchup is going to be going well for me.
Yeah, I'm going to hobble along with this one. It's interesting, though, as well. If we were on the chatting on the server here, we might discuss, well, would you actually play the Cursed Heart here first? Because maybe you want to mitigate that damage before you get your own down. But that usually requires grabbing the calculator, and I think this one's a little bit more clear-cut.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to pass back over to Feldon's Fisher and then take a point of damage.
You got it. So we take our
I'm
first
winning.
hit here. Yes, you are. You got it, Mr. Scum. You're winning. So we take our first hit here. Not that big of a concern. Get that second Skyfisher down, reset that remote farm, and now we're winning as we chip in for 2.
All right, and getting in some damage as well, right, on that attack phase.
Exactly. Just get that first Skyfisher hit in there, and not necessarily needing to lean on that cane just yet.
Cool. All right. Crimson Kings at 18, and turn passes.
Yeah, so I think my play here is pretty straightforward. I'm going to drop my last card, Innocent Blood, forcing him to sacrifice a creature. I'll assume he sacks either of the core Skyfishers, doesn't really matter. It's going to go to the bin, and I might take this time just to crack my Felden's Cane and bring that Innocent Blood back to my hand, because there's no real threat to how it's going to play out. But already you can see it is not going to go well, considering he has his own cane. And then I'll ship it back to you, Puermeus.
Notably, that the cane does shuffle them back into your library, and so with multiple cards, you don't get to just buy them back right away, right? You have to kind of stack how they go back into your deck with that perfect information and perfect randomness. And we'll see that come into play probably in a future matchup here. But hopping back over to my turn, if that's all right there, Topsy.
Perfectly. Yeah, that's a great point. Go ahead and take it down. We're going to take a point on the upkeep. And,
correct. So tie game.
Untap
and
leave it to you.
We untap that remote farm and take our point of damage. And notably, remote farm still has that 2 mana on it here because we reset it with our Skyfisher the prior turn. So we can get our Felden's Cane out. Should we need it, that Oppressive Raise could be used. But in this situation, instead of tapping for anything here, we'll get in for our first 2 points. And then tap, get the cane out, and if we're playing for jokes, I can always Oppressive Raise my own Skyfisher and try and outpace him with just the 1, but I think I'll just crack the cane, let the mana fizzle, and ship it back here.
So with that, I would, like you guys said, I would draw my Innocent Blood now. Play it again, or even maybe I would wait till he drops a second core Skyfisher. But I mean, regardless, if you're watching visually, you can probably see there's no real way to outpace this. Eventually, I will run out of sack effects. Like right now, I'll say I play it. He sacrifices the core Skyfisher. On that, he can crack it at any point, start rinsing and repeating. And I don't think his 4 damage I can beat with my 1 damage per turn.
In this situation, just because I did crack the cane prior, I'm only going to be chipping in for like 2 points a turn. So it's even then it outpaces not getting to the 4.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we move to the next turn.
And my turn, I draw that core Skyfisher that I got back into my library off Felden's Cane, play it, reset the land, and obviously taking that damage on my upkeep, and then passing it back over to LuckyScum.
And I'll pass it back to you.
Yep, you're out of gas, so I'll take my 1 on my upkeep, and then I'll start chipping in for 2 a turn, and then my clock is faster than yours, and so I'll take this round.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. I appreciate you explaining that. I think that's visually interesting and completely sort of what this format is about. So as you can see, matches don't take very long. This was actually a pretty good one, where there was a few turns that were that you play out to. There's interesting interactions with land. Obviously, core Skyfisher's effects make things a little bit more interesting. The canes allow for sort of replaying pieces that were either previously lost or just played initially. But for the most part, games can go about this length, maybe a little longer. I'd say this is probably a little bit more on the longer end. If you're just kind of wondering what to expect with, sort of a 5CB match like this. But yeah, we would go ahead and give the win over to Puermeus on Felden's Fisher.
Cheers. And we definitely have a round 2 where LuckyScum's on the play. and I'm more than happy to play it out here for our viewers at home. But mathematically, and just how we saw round one play out here, I think that it does just end up falling into my hands once again. And that's something we do see happen on the Discord quite a lot when people run their own matches. Is we just post our thoughts and then our final scores and just see if the opponent agrees. So, Lucky, is this something that is that outcome what you expect to happen?
I would, I would definitely agree. I don't think I can. I don't think I can keep up with your fast fishers there.
There we go.
All right. So essentially what you're saying a lot of times too is that, because obviously we only have access to 5 cards, you're creating a micro engine that can output a certain amount of damage at a certain rate, right? And so sometimes in the, I guess, maybe control-y matchups, more or less, it's sort of a race in terms of damage output, and certain engines are faster than others.
Definitely, and then sometimes you'll even find where, like you were commenting with the points earlier, you'll come to a stalemate where you can't. If you attack, you lose. So both of you sit there staring at each other, and that's the correct line, and it's what it has to be. Luckily, in this situation, we don't have to have that stalemate.
Right. And I have seen instances previously in other derbies as well, where in a matchup of 2 lists, the optimal play may actually just to be, rather than lose and take 0 points for the match, if you can sort of stalemate that match purposefully, like that may actually be the optimal play to sort of stall games out. So that's also kind of an interesting aspect of the format too, that you don't so much see in traditional Magic.
Definitely, especially with those. I don't know if we have an example today or not, but those foil root wallet decks where if you just don't play a spell, they never can play their creature. Why not just draw instead of lose, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, for I guess for Puermeus, sort of taking this matchup, we mentioned earlier that this is a list that you've entered in other derbies previously. And have seen some success. Would you say that this list performs pretty well? I mean, did it perform how you expected it to, I guess, in this matchup?
In this matchup, I think that just with the removal package that LuckyScum packed, it was how I anticipated my more mid-range styled list to go, and it's how I wanted my engine to run. And I think that moving forward, if I were to see any changes in this list that I'd like to make, it'd really be a meta call, and I've already got some plans for the upcoming derby that I'd rather not spoil here today for a revised version of this list. But say the meta navigates towards something with more land destruction or discard effects, then this type of interactive on the board state style list really isn't going to have as much of an impact. And so it's been interesting to see when this deck finds success, or when I submit it for the second week in a row, like last season, and suddenly find it not performing very well.
Okay, LuckyScum, anything to add on your end of the matchup? What were some of the weak points that you'd say here?
Oh, so some of the weak points on my deck. Definitely, I mean, not having a creature means you usually don't get to do as much damage. The point of the deck was, try and avoid the creature removal. Hey, I avoided his oppressive raise. Unfortunately, not being able to deal with his recursion kind of bit me there. The one card I do like the most in that deck is the Curse of the Pierced Heart, because every season is very little enchantment removal. Seen it maybe 3 decks this entire time. It's very rare to see. So if you're able to get out some consistent pieces like that, most opponents will never be able to deal with it. Puermeus, he did bring a way to deal with it. Felden's Cane is wonderful. Like I said before, it basically doubles your hand size if you use it right. He brought the better deck for that one.
I think too that Innocent Blood's great in this list too. There are a lot of lists that you see where there's just sort of one main threat that you have to deal with, and so I think in this way it seems pretty optimal to me, right? That you wouldn't expect And maybe that's the thing. You should expect a Kane now, since it's been such a popular choice for a lot of the lists, especially in Season 2. But normally getting around Innocent Blood is a pretty difficult thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Innocent Blood definitely has been seeing more and more play, which is what this deck was intended to do. But Feldon's Cane is something that is very hard to deal with. And I think we're going to start to see a lot more counterplays to it. What's the single black version, Divest?
Yeah.
I think we might see a little bit more of that coming up in order to counteract the everyone bringing a cane to the party.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. At this point, at least for your list, as far as it's concerned, obviously it operates really well. I love the passive ability. Are there any adjustments you think you would make? So maybe you just answered my question. Are you thinking maybe instead of Innocent Blood, more of a Divest play? Or were there any other sort of additions you maybe would consider for this list?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely instead of Innocent Blood, bringing Divest, I actually think is probably something I should have done. Because being able to then, because Divest says force an opponent to discard an artifact or creature, since I have the Cane and I get to essentially cast that spell twice, I do get a lot more flexibility. So I think that would have been definitely an improvement I could have made.
And Lucky, what are your thoughts on maybe putting that Divest in over top of instead of Kane, and you're in the Crimson King's court here, giving you the Innocent Blood and the Divest angle to interact on?
I was thinking about that too. I do think though, because of how powerful Feldon's Cane is, because it basically doubles the amount I would be able then to cast. I think it's the same. I think the outcome really is the same then. It's either I get an Innocent Blood and a Divest, or I get to cast Divest twice and potentially protect my Curse of the Pierced Heart if for some reason my opponent brings enchantment removal.
Great point.
All right. Well, before we move on to our second matchup, any other final thoughts on matchup number 1?
No one's keeping score, right?
Well, I think it'd be fun to see what our final results are today if you're down for a little competition.
Oh, I'm always. So yes, that one then would be because Puermeus won 2 rounds, he gets 3 points apiece. So that would be 6-0 for Puermeus.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for calling that out. That's exactly how that score would work, and I think that's great. So let's jump into our second matchup. For the second matchup, we have Catch a Wave by LuckyScum versus Pete's Immolating Rite of Cane Consumption by Puermeus. That list name is amazing. I'm sensing, obviously, a theme here surrounding canes, which you talked about a little bit before, and also the destruction of them. Puermeus, can you tell us a little bit more about what's going on here with this amazing submission?
Yeah, no problem. So with this list, as I said earlier on in today's discussion, I wanted to present the different variety of strategies that have been demonstrated in the Derby so far. There's not just these mid-range Dirtle fests. There's also combo decks like the one I'm about to demonstrate today, and control decks, which in my last submission here, I'd like to highlight. And so in this submission today, we're using Feldon's Cane not as a way to rebuy interaction or threats, but as a way to protect and, as we discovered in a little bit of the earlier discussion, enable a combo in this situation.
Excellent. All right. Then as for the opposing list, we've got Catch a Wave. Could you tell us a little bit more about the strategy for this one and kind of break this down for us?
Yeah, so Catch a Wave, there is a player in the Discord server, which if you have not joined, you definitely need to. So it was a take on Shane's list for Boggles. I added in some land hate with the card not Favor of the Overbearing, a Convincing Mirage. Land hate was really shown to be effective in the form of changing your opponent's land to something else that it should be, rather than destroying the land outright. Some other cards like this are Seize Claim or Evil Presence. where you force the opponent's land to become an island or a swamp. And for this deck, I was okay with paying the extra 1 mana to make sure that I get to pick exactly what land I'm forcing them into.
All right, wonderful. Let's get started. Do you? Let's go ahead and maybe have catch a wave sort of on the play in this one. Let's walk us through your first turn.
Yeah. So my first turn is pretty standard. Looking at what he has, nothing that he's going to make me sacrifice my cute little Boggle. So I'm going to drop my depletion land, very similar to the farm that Puermeus played last round, but for blue mana. So I'll play that, get my 2 counters on it. Then I want to get my Boggle out as quick as possible, so I will drop my Lotus Petal, sack it immediately, and play my Boggle. After that, I've done all I can, since it is a tap land, and I'll ship it over to Puermeus.
All right. What's the optimal play for Pete's immolating Rite of Cain consumption?
What a mouthful.
I had to use one word from every card in the deck. Obviously, that's just how it
I
works.
like it. I mean, I feel like you're really telling the story here. So that's a very cool trend that I think should continue.
Great. Yeah. I mean, it's a combo deck. Every card's got to be in the name, right? So in this situation, this is where I now realize that I made a mistake when I built my deck. I thought that I had a really quick turn to kill here, but turns out I forgot how Phyrexian mana works, and it's 2 life to pay the cost, not 1. So we'll see how that changes my game plan as we proceed. I know that he's got the Convincing Mirage, but I'm not going to be able to do anything without playing my second depletion land of the day, the Pete's Bog for black here. So I bite the bullet and play it out. And then I pass it back to LuckyScum.
All right. I'll take it, untap my land, and looking at what you got, I am going to break that deck. I'm going to pay the 2 and cast Convincing Mirage. And I'm going to force that Pete's Bog into... I'm going to pick Mountains.
Okay.
With that, I'll also get in for 1 damage on you, bringing you to 19. With that, it's going to be a rough road for you.
Got that right.
All right. Well, you've got a mountain. What do we do now? What's the optimal play here?
So now that I've been blood mooned by my opponent, my deck just doesn't function. And at this point, I'm gonna get chipped for 1 and damage a turn or 3 damage a turn. However, Lucky wants to proceed until I have lost the round. So there's nothing I can do. And he's going to take this one.
All right. Congrats to Lucky. Let's now, without looking too deeply at these lists, how are your thoughts on replaying on that second matchup? Are there any significant changes? Being that there is sort of that unintended understanding of Phyrexian mana, and then also a way to sort of keep you off the colors needed to sort of getting your ritual out and such. Do we run a second game in this instance?
Definitely. Game 2, my list actually has a chance still. Somehow, even with that blunder, I can still get the 20 damage done over here. So I'd love to take a turn on the play if Lucky you're up
Absolutely.
for it.
No, I can see that you can do some things, so I'm nervous.
All right, yeah, take it away. Let's get into it.
Great. Since I'm on the play, I'm gonna actually be able to use my land this time. So I'll get the Peat Bog out there and ship it over to LuckyScum.
Perfect. I'll take it, and I will do the same play that I did before. Get out my depletion land, get out my Lotus Petal, and get out my Boggle, and then pass it back to you.
Great. So on my second turn here, unlike last round, I actually get to use my mana, which is a huge part of that play draw and why it's so important we do have both those matches this time around. And if the card worked like I wanted it to, I could go Dark Ritual into Soul Eater and then pay all my life and kill him with Right. But alas, it doesn't work how I had initially remembered that working. So instead, So I'll tap the Pete's Bog for 2 mana, and I'm going to Dark Ritual, so I have a total of 4 after that. Playing out Emoting Soul Eater, and with 1 floating afterwards, I'll play my Felden's Cane. As I may have previously indicated, I initially thought that Soul Eater here would be able to become a 20/1, forgetting how Phyrexian mana worked, so that's on me. Seeing as LuckyScum has land destruction, I'm not going to be able to do a set of 10 twice, utilizing Felden's Cane and Rite of Consumption to reload the cannon. So in this situation, I'm using Dark Ritual into Soul Eater and Felden's Cane to give myself a blocker that either is going to work out for me or is not going to work out for me, as LuckyScum may or may not be able to give his creature flying. And that's my turn.
Well, with that, I'll take the play. And yeah, I was actually a bit surprised you... oh, wait, you only had 3 mana. Never mind. So yeah, I will untap my land, and right away I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to pick a forest this time. And I'm going to turn your Pete's Bog into a forest, essentially locking out the way that your deck works.
You got that right.
And definitely not also going to swing in for 1 this time, as I do need my... I'm sure. I need my Boggle to be alive.
Okay.
And I'll pass it back to you.
So at this point, we can see the writing on the wall. He's got Favor of the Overbeing, being able to make his Slippery Boggle into a 3/3 flyer. Should he have missed the line, or we both miss the line, because it's good to collaborate and make sure you're both looking for the right play, of changing my land to one that is not usable, I might have been able to try and find a way to chip in or block his creature, but in this situation, even if I pay a bunch of life into the Soul Eater, he's just going to kill me with his Boggle. So this is another round that goes to LuckyScum, if you agree there, Lucky.
Agree. And that was also, it's a nice point that you make, is that the point of the format is not really to beat down your opponent or to, make sneaky plays that they don't see coming. It's to work together and try and see these cool engines that you can create with 5 cards.
Yeah, and it lets you really, in theme of the Derby, it lets you tune your engine should something have not gone right this week. You can come back with something next week. Maybe I can find another way to make a Soul Eater here actually combo as intended.
And maybe you can learn to read the card.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent point, LuckyScum. You're right. It's the stakes aren't very high. Where it's more of a collaborative sort of format and process, and that's kind of what makes it special, especially during times when we're a lot more virtual these days. And so in a way, I guess I never considered before, it is really cool to see so much participation and sort of, I guess, kind of a contribution to the gathering, we should say, in that way. So yeah, I think that's a great point. Puermeus, you mentioned, before, sort of, and I've certainly done this hundreds of times now with some of my brews, just kind of overlooking like this mechanic in specifically speaking, for Phyrexian mana. What would your approach be with like this list going forward? Like, would this change the list completely, or would you? Is there another creature maybe you had in mind that could benefit from this shell, or how would you either fix this or repair it?
So that's a great question. And I think, first of all, it's important to recognize that this list isn't just a complete failure due to me not reading the card correctly or understanding the mechanic as I should have. If with this he didn't have the land destruction, I can still get 20 points across by rebuying the Rite of Consumption with the Felden's Cane and the Depletion Land and the whole 5 cards, really. And I can do the combo twice, getting the 20. So in the end, it isn't terrible. It's still a functioning engine. It's just his interaction lines up better into the game plan here.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Thank you.
It's not a broken deck.
Yeah. And in the future, the easiest way to really adjust this, I think, is instead of looking at that sacrifice plan, which can only get to, say, 10 power, what if I instead go for double strike and haste, and I try to turbo to win that way. There's definitely other ways that this card could be used, or even infect, for example.
Yeah,
I think
that's
an interesting point as well. Yeah, like you take something like Tainted Strike, maybe, that just just totally changes the whole feel of the list. All of a sudden, is interesting.
Yeah, I think we recently saw there were in the 5-card blind underground, there were 2 decks that used that to its advantage. I think it was Space Fisho and Delphi, who both played out against each other with Tainted Strike and I believe it was Timir Battle Rage trying to it's do not discount the Soul Eater. It definitely is viable, and I assume that we'll see more of it in the future.
It's even funnier because that in the format they're playing, neither of them knew what was going on, and both are like, I'm gonna play Soul Eater this time. That's gonna be great. And they ended up having to face off.
Yeah.
Well, that was a fantastic match. It was really cool seeing that. This is a new list. I hadn't seen this one yet, so it's really cool to see that sort of new addition. I get a little giddy when it comes to particularly around the time when we kick off a new season or a new derby event, because everyone's got just kind of fantastic lists and just killer names for them, and it's such a cool time to sort of put together the materials. It's always fun to see. And another thing that's interesting about the format as well, at least on the server anyway, is you mentioned earlier kind of going back and retuning lists, and we do see a fair bit of that, but surprisingly I think just because of the nature of the format and just how open it is in terms of brewing and allowing for that creativity, we surprisingly see just a lot of new lists every time, and so it's really fresh, I think, in that way too. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Bucky, would you like to hop in first here?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This format it's always inspiring new interesting 5-card creations. If you are ever interested in making your own, I think the best way to go about that, and we'll actually, maybe I can explain it with the next list that's coming up, but is go to Scryfall and sort it by Pauper with the advanced filters. And it's actually really easy to come up with any kind of easy brew. Just search, maybe I want to make my opponent discard. So add that to the filter. Maybe you want to go black. Black's always good with discarding. So Scryfall, if you do want to start off, that's the first place I would go.
Definitely. Another great way to come up with different ideas for the derby, at least in my experience so far, I mentioned the Pauper block cube that Lucky and I have been working on here for a while earlier, but we've also recently started to fiddle with a 5CB Derby cube just because of how engaging the format has been, and wanting to be able to brew with different restrictions and finding different intuitive or unintuitive combinations. And that second cube environment, the 5CB cube environment, is actually where this combo deck came from, and it won a couple matches over there, even with the correct understanding of the rules text.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out. I will definitely leave some links in the description on this one, just to sort of share some of these sort of resources and tools. And maybe we can jump into a little bit more detail in terms of how we approach sort of making some of these lists sort of towards the end of the episode.
Sure.
Before our final matchup, any other final thoughts on matchup number 2 for Rite of Cain versus Catch a Wave?
I think that makes it tied up at 6 points apiece. All going to come down to the final.
The man's keeping score.
Now that it's tied up, I think we can keep score. I think it's fair now.
Yeah. You scared there, Lucky?
No, not at all.
All right.
Actually, I don't. I just opened your last list, and I think I'm a little bit scared of it, but this is going to be a tight one. The one change I would make to my own deck, Catch a Wave, would be paying that extra mana in the form of a Lotus Petal. It's good. It's really good for quickly getting out my Boggle. But I think that if I want to maybe change it up, maybe switch out my Land Hate for a Seize Claim, and then also maybe switch out my Lotus Petal for an Island, It might be a little bit slower, but it might allow me to do more things on a little bit more of a variety there. I haven't played it out. I'm just thinking in my head right now.
That makes sense. Yeah, the island might afford you to just be a little bit more stable, right? Because, the one thing too, I don't know we've seen it all that much, but I mean, I guess you could take out the Lotus somehow, although most times you're going to have that sort of stack response. So maybe that doesn't so much matter, but I think an island would be interesting in terms of having that continuous land access.
Yeah, if I was playing against a black deck that did have Divest, I would lose instantly if they forced me to discard that or discard my Boggle as well. So the deck does have its weaknesses. It just so happens that against specific combo decks like that rely on depletion lands, if you're able to take out those depletion lands, you almost always have it in the bag.
And another idea, just because I think a number of us have been brewing with Bogles there, and there's been a couple different submissions on and different ways to use that. Maybe even getting rid of the depletion land and just going for island and maybe a colony garden, so you can play around that ever-present innocent blood, and you still have your 2 mana for your Favor of the Overbeing.
That is a good idea. I like that.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some improvements made to this list, and I will not at all be surprised to see this sort of maybe entered one of our derbies. It's a really fantastic list. You're surely doing a lot with 5 card slots. So bravo on the construction there. Very cool. For our final matchup, it's going to be Black Cane versus Slow and Steady. Obviously, this is the I guess third installment in the trilogy of Cane lists today. Puermeus, do you want to maybe give us a little bit more explanation on how Black Cane's supposed to work?
Sure. Before I jump into it, I do need to give credit where credit is due. I did not create this list. I was just so impressed with it that I had to bring it to today's discussion. A member of our Discord community, MTG Delphi, had brewed this, and I just think it is very clean, very elegant, and very efficient. A lot of the cards have multiple uses, and it allows the list to pivot and play different roles depending on the matchup, and it utilizes that Felden's Cane to the absolute extreme by being able to buy back all 4 of the cards in the case of land destruction, but buys back 2 pieces of interaction or your threat. We'll see as the games play out here, and I think this one's going to be pretty complicated. The different nuances that can come with the decision making in his list that he made. Okay,
well said. I will agree. Delphi is an absolute maniac. So I'm always interested to see what his submissions are. He's a
legend, man.
He's a legend in this format that's just emerging already somehow, and he has so many points right now on that leaderboard. So
double the next closest.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. That being said, I want to hear a little bit more about Slow and Steady and sort of the strategy involved with this list on trying to take the match. So tell us a little bit more about the strategy with this one.
Yeah, so this was actually one of the first decks that I really, when I was just starting out on the server, the first time I joined Puermeus, he gave me one of his lists. I was still trying to figure it out. This is the one where I really sat down, cracked open Scryfall, and thought how I was going to enter. I noticed that everyone was always consistently bringing 2 creatures. It was, at the time, that was what everyone was doing. And there was also a little bit of land destruction. So I thought, okay, well, how do I get around all of these problems? I started off with Daze. Daze is a great, it's probably one of the best counterspells, maybe aside from foil in the format, and the fact that there is no real cost to it, aside from returning a land to your hand, which in this case, in attempting to get around land destruction also helps. So Daze was my first centerpiece. Then in trying to deal with 2 creatures, I looked around a bit. There weren't many cards that could deal with 2 creatures at the same time. So I brought 2 Bind the Monsters. Again, it's not sacrificing them, not destroying them, but just tapping them down and locking them out. That way they're not a threat. The last card I brought was a Thriving Turtle. At the time, the previous champion was, I believe it was a deck called Pharaohs, where it was 2 big walls and a bunch of deserts. Deserts can deal 1 damage to attacking creatures, and I think the previous champion brought 3 of them. So I decided to try and find a 1/4. So I picked the Thriving Turtle, and that was actually exactly how my thought process was in creating this deck.
I totally remember that list that you're talking about. I think that was by Space Show early on in the season, which was an amazing list. I like that idea of using Turtle here, which, it's funny. It's weird when you juxtapose this format to that of your standard Pauper, right? Because you have cards in some ways that, like with Days, I guess you would expect it to be used. But in other ways, it kind of allows for, just a whole slew of other cards that just, aren't traditionally seen in a lot of lists, or at least, higher tier meta lists. And in that way, it's kind of fun, to just sort of get some fresh cards out there. And Thriving Turtle in this format is not a meme at all. It's a pretty rad card, actually.
Absolutely.
And notably, Days being allowed to be played in the format because we operate under a different ban list than standard Pauper.
That's a great point, and we should probably bring that up a little bit. Days is currently banned in Pauper as a result of sort of the Blue Monday bans a few years ago now. And in our format here, let's see if we can think back. So we've got Wistful Thinking.
The most recent edition.
The most recent edition, working backwards, I guess.
The first one I remember was Burning Inquiry.
Burning Inquiry is one. Shane definitely broke that in our first in our first derby. I think the idea with that card as well is that discarding your playing something like a Divest or a Duress is sort of interesting in a 5-card format, but something that can just sort of rip all the cards away, while very effective, I think somewhat kind of hurts the spirit, since it doesn't really make for the most engaging or interactive games, I guess. So currently we do have the 3 cards on our ban list. Everything else so far is open season until someone breaks something else, and we're forced to adjust. But our final card on that list, I should mention, was Empty the Warrens. Which I had actually seen. We haven't had an issue with that card. Well, it's been banned since the very beginning. I have seen other 3-card blind formats that have banned that card for sort of similar reasons. We can certainly take a look at maybe unbanning that as well, just because I think that the people brewing in this format right now can definitely handle answering it. But those are our 3 cards, that are currently in the ban list, and everything else so far is open season, I should say.
And recently we've had the addition of Chatterstorm, both to the normal Pauper meta, taking that by storm, pun unintended. And then in our format here, 5CB, Chatterstorm's also finding a home in a couple of different lists. So seeing the potency of those Chatterstorm decks, I'd be personally a little trepidatious to re-entering Empty the Warrens, because that's Chatterstorm on another level.
That's a good point, and we haven't seen Chatterstorm too much yet, but that could definitely bring it out. I'd be interested to see how a 5-card Chatterstorm would work, but I digress.
9 power, turn 2.
Yeah. With that being said, any other thoughts before we jump into the final match?
Just best of luck to LuckyScum here. I know this is going to be a difficult one to talk through.
Yeah, definitely. There's I can see 1,000 different lines we can take, so we'll take it slow for my sake.
Well, as he thinks about that, let's say that Puermeus Blackcane will be on the play first. Take us through the first turn here.
Okay, so there are so many different decisions to be made here because of how everything's going to be interacting and all the different pieces. And notably, both of us only have 1 mana, so that Daze is straight up counterspell to anything we play. Knowing that in advance, I think that it's really important that I just get the Felden's Cane out here now. So if he does remove a piece that I need to win the game, I can get it back later. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to LuckyScum.
Yeah, I fully agree with that play. I was thinking of all the best ways that my deck could win, and you playing Felden's Cane is the one route that hurts me the most. So on the play, normally I would immediately play my turtle, and with your cane, I know you have recursion, but because of the way that you interact, trying to think here. No, turtle's still his best play. Always get out turtle.
I agree. I think that it's really important for you to resolve him because I can always have that Innocent Blood available, and you might as well get it out and try to protect it, right?
Yep. Daze is good at protecting my turtle.
All right.
Cowabunga. Let's pass the turn.
Radical. Totally tubular, dude. All right. So, Black Cane here on turn 2. We are faced with another several decisions. What spell do we want to have dazed? And I think the answer is attempting to resolve the Innocent Blood, because that way our win con's protected from the counter spell, as well as he's forced to interact or he loses the game. So I don't want to make him discard either, because he just gets rid of bind the monster, and I'm foreseeing that already not being that big of a problem, so it's definitely just going ahead and leading with that Innocent Blood.
And yeah, I'd like to respond and cast Daze.
Yeah, and so
yeah,
the expected outcome here. And with that, I'm done on my end, so LuckyScum.
Perfect. So immediately, you got no creatures. I'm going to start cracking in. I will swing with my turtle, making him a 1/4, dealing 1 to you.
Got me.
And with that, I'll pass it back to you.
All right. Now, Topsy, what do you think we're doing here? What's my turn look like to you? Because sometimes in the Discord, we do throw it out to other people to confirm lines. So what do you think should happen here?
Yeah, that is very interesting. I would probably... Maybe the approach could be to sort of like try to deal with LuckyScum's board, I think, like before you start putting your win condition maybe in place. So maybe cracking the... Maybe discarding first and then cracking the cane to have another Funeral Charm, and then kind of getting your game plan online for later.
So I definitely hear what you're saying, and I think that's also a very good line. The line that I'm going to try first, because again, we could run this, and I can say, oh, well, what about this other line? And we might have to backtrack and replay this and find out the most optimal lines, right? So before we try that one, I'd like to try just running out the Nested Shambler here, because I'm okay with him binding the monster on it, because I can use Funeral Charm on the Nested Shambler to give it +2/-1, and when it dies, I'll make 3 squirrels, which can then be used to kind of play around that bind the monster problem.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that.
Mm-hmm. And that's where that kind of flexibility that I was talking about in Delphi's list here comes into play, because Funeral Charm isn't just a discard whatever card you want spell or make your opponent discard 2 cards. It can provide you some necessary evasion at some point, or it can turn your Nested Shambler into a 3/3, or with Cane a 6/6. So it really is quite an effective and flexible card.
That's an interesting point, I would say, too, where we do see a lot of cards like, for example, Dawnbringer Cleric in the latest set that come out, that have sort of a nice amount of value and are very versatile in terms of like making that choice. And it's kind of interesting to see like a card all the way back from like Visions, still provide similar choices. So I think that's a great point about the card. And this is, would say this is part of that dialogue, as you were saying before, in trying to, with some lists, it can be a little bit challenging trying to even determine what the optimal play is, assuming that these lists are making those optimal plays. So I think that's a good call out.
Exactly. And for example, we might want to even go back and consider what happens if he doesn't daze the Innocent Blood, but in this situation, obviously, he needed to. So, yeah, anyway, I'm digressing. LuckyScum, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with your play. So with that, I'll untap my creature, and I will immediately crack in for 1 point of damage and hope you block.
I will elect not to because we're trying to play perfectly here on both
I
sides.
know. Yeah, and with that, I'll pass it to you because I know what's coming, and I hate squirrels.
You have a squirrel EDH deck. I don't know about that there, Lucky. But on the next turn here, it's turn 3 or 4 now, turn 3, Funeral Charm on my own Nested Shambler. Make it into 3 different, or I guess I attack for 1 first. Get that 1 point in. And then we're going to do that Funeral Charm, make the 3 squirrels. And now that I have all 3 of my primary spells in the bin, I can crack that cane, and I can put them back into my library. And just because, again, we get to choose what happens if something's random, what that would be the most beneficial in this format, I'm going to elect to stack it. So I have Funeral Charm on the bottom, Nested Shambler second to the bottom, and then Innocent Blood on top. So next turn I'll draw that Innocent Blood. So with my 3 squirrels in play, the cane cracked, I'm going to ship it back to LuckyScum here.
All right. And with that, I do not have many options. It's still not even worth playing a Bind the Monster right now because if we were to play optimally, and I do want to get the least amount of damage done to me, it would be better to hold my turtle up as a blocker, try and kill one of those squirrels, and maybe bind what's ever left. But I can already see this is a race that I am not going to win. And with that, I will hold up my turtle and I'll pass it back to you.
And even if you attack there, like you were saying, you don't gain that much. So
No.
On my turn here, I draw that Innocent Blood because, again, we got to choose what happens when something's random, so I know I'm drawing it. And I just going to cast Innocent Blood. Scum's going to lose his turtle. I'll lose one of my 3 squirrels. And then Kraken for 2. And at this point, even with the 2 remaining Bind the Monsters, I still have an army in the can on its way. I don't think there's any way Lucky gets out of this.
Nope, I think that is a clean kill on your part, Puermeus.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great example of just kind of like you were saying before, there's decks and lists that offer just multiple lines and trying to, determine what is the most optimal. This is a great example of that, of, you have some real choices. And it's sort of interesting that, the amount of complexity that you can truly generate just with 5 cards, let alone, the 60 or 75 that we're sort of used to dealing with. So I think that's definitely a testament, like you said, to just solid deck making.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I was going to say, at 5 cards with the Pauper restriction as well, that in addition, it's crazy what people are coming up with.
Yeah, I think Topsy, you submitted a Midnight Guard Presence of Gone combo list last week, and that was really interesting to see.
No, yeah, I mean, thanks. So far, it's doing pretty well. I think that's sort of meta dependent. I think it's pretty easy to deal with. But yeah, that was something I just sort of wanted to brew just sort of on the fly to give folks some ideas about how we kind of go about doing that or how it should work. Because 5-card deck. I feel like you have a lot of questions, when you're talking about something like that. So yeah, I thought it was good to maybe throw that out there. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's been doing pretty well. So there is a difference, I would say, though, between making a deck that is functional and then making a deck that is exceptionally functional. And so I would leave that to you guys who have scored a lot higher on the leaderboards than I have. So all right, well, let's jump into our second game here. We're gonna go ahead and restart.
Now this is the harder round here, much more complicated.
Interesting. Take us through that first turn.
So I guess then I will start off with Slow and Steady in round 2, and I will do the play of Island into Thriving Turtle. Puermeus, we've seen it sometimes where you don't always. The optimal play is to not play. I'm trying to think. I think that Actually, technically speaking, this might be one of those plays, as I would want you to hit your own creature with the innocent blood.
Maybe I'm not sure. We might have to try one with and one without. But so are you thinking you want to play the turtle here and just wait for me to play the nested shambler?
Yeah, maybe, but then you do hit it with the funeral charm regardless. So you know what?
Yeah,
Let's get out the turtle. I
I
like
think
him.
I think it's correct to play the turtle here, just because that nested shambler isn't really going to be punished by the innocent blood too much. Uh, I still am going to be left behind in the end with about 4 squirrels, right? So
Yeah.
I think turtle right away seems fair.
Okay. And then with that, I have my thriving turtle out as a 0/3, and then I will pass it to you.
Great. So I'll go for swamp, and then I'm just going to run right into it and start with that innocent blood and force the daze.
Yep, I will definitely respond to that and daze it. There's no because even if I daze the Felden's Cane, I'm then left with an empty board state.
Yeah, and I think that's just part of the punish here for maybe not have, like, again, the power of Felden's Cane being able to double up on that removal in that board state, and that's why Delphi's list here is so efficient, because it really utilizes that recursion to its maximum.
Absolutely. With that, I think I'll go into my second turn where I will put down the land that I picked up with Daze. Got nothing else since you have no creatures on the board, so I can't bind the monster, and I will crack into you, become a 1/4, and deal 1 to you.
Okay.
And ship
Fantastic.
it your way.
All right, so still having to deal with that energized turtle. I think it's correct to get that Felden's Cane down here now that he can't interact with it. And actually, no, I don't think that's correct, because I'm only going to be able to rebuy the innocent blood in this situation, and I want to be able to get the maximum value. So I think it's actually correct in this situation to now play out the nested shambler, and with that, I will ship it.
Yeah, definitely. That is the best way to do it. Eventually, we'll get to the point where you are rebuying your entire graveyard again, which I'm not a fan of. And with that, untap, rinse and repeat. 1 at you. He is definitely not going to block, and then I'll pass it back to you, Puermeus.
You got that correct, Lucky. And so Funeral Charm again here on that nested shambler. Turn it into 3 bodies and pass it back.
Yeah, pass it back. You know, I'm going to just keep swinging now with this beautiful turtle. I assume you're probably not going to block.
No, sir.
Yeah, you want those bodies out for the innocent blood that'll be coming my way.
Are you planning on
your go.
Are you going to use your bind the monster here to mitigate some damage, or what's your thoughts there?
Honestly, I could, I could, but the funny thing about bind the monster is you take as much damage as the creature's power, so I'll be taking 1 regardless. But sure, yeah, let's bind one of those squirrels down.
Great. So then coming to my next turn here, play that cane, we'll crack that cane, and just like last time, we're going to stack the libraries. So we have Charm on the bottom, Shambler in the middle, Innocent Blood on top, and with my 2 untapped guys, I'll swing into Lucky's open board, get in for 2, and then pass the turn, fully expecting to be able to deal with my problem next turn.
Yeah, not looking forward to that. I will bind down another one of those squirrels, take that extra damage, and we can already see, math-wise, there is no amount of damage this turtle can do. I could hold up for blocks. That's technically the optimal play.
Still gonna get innocent blooded.
Exactly. And with that, I will pass it to you and accept my fate.
All right. Well, turns out your energy turtle couldn't do it this time. I finally get my revenge from the last derby. And yeah, innocent blood, pop that off, get rid of one of my squirrels with an enchantment on it, kill the turtle, and then get in for 1. And I think this is my game from this point on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well done.
GG.
Yeah, GG's all around. That was really interesting. Yeah, the lines, that kind of a lot to think about with Kane. Like you were saying before, as sort of being like a power piece for the format of just being able to sort of, like you said, replay and giving you access to, like, you know, at the end of the day, some contenders are playing 5 CB where you might be actually playing 7 or 8 CB, maybe even 10 CB. So
exactly. But in this situation, if Lucky, say, had a second Daze as opposed to a second Bind the Monster, then I'd be out of luck, right? He would easily be able to run over me with the turtle just because of that one meta decision that he made for today's event.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and that's part of the fun of it is just trying your best to predict what the opponent's going to bring. And with that, I think that is all 3 of our matches. So the final score looks like I got a solid 6 points. Also, you got a solid 6 points, and Delphi got 6 points.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right there. Gotta give credit where it's due.
Well,
Sure.
you brought it, so I think Puermeus, you're the winner.
Thank you, but I'm just glad we got to explore this a little bit today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was very fun. I think I did have a question regarding this last matchup, or rather, I have 2 questions. I guess one for each of you. Being that we mentioned that Delphi's list is so efficient, Puermeus, is there anything that I guess this is an open-ended question for both of you, but is there anything that you think could be changed on this list to turn that home run into a grand slam, or is it sort of kind of at the ceiling of efficiency? Is it at its peak?
That's a very hard question, especially with new cards coming out every couple months nowadays. I'm not sure. I've spent a lot of time fiddling with this style of deck as well as this one in particular, and I think just how all of the interaction lines up and the flexibility it provides, I can't personally see, unless there's a huge shift in the meta and you need to have, say, a duress, for example, over a funeral charm, then this list is really solid, and I don't personally have any changes. I think that there's definitely strategies in other colors that can follow that one land, one Felden's Cane shell and really benefit from having those 3 spells being recurred, and we'll probably see some of my exploration into that in future events. But Delphi's list here, I honestly have no complaints. I've lost to it several times now. It's really strong, and I think he did a really good job with it.
Well said. Lucky, how about you? Anything that you would add to this, or is it kind of operating at peak performance, would you say?
Yeah, I would say it is definitely at peak performance. I also think that even the fact that it is operating at peak performance doesn't mean it is going to win every time. If I had decided, you know what, everyone's only running 1 creature, I'm going to swap out one of those Bind the Monsters and bring a Seize Claim, which would turn that swamp into an island. If I just did that, it would have been a completely different matchup.
Definitely.
That's a good point. I also wonder about even just a second copy of Days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like,
honestly, why not just 4 Dazes, right? Like, go all the way.
Yeah.
And with that, I have a new idea for the next Derby.
Oh God, please don't. Please don't do it. I'm not here to win. I'm here to be confused.
That's right.
Oh gosh.
Very cool. I guess with that, the only final thing I would ask you, Lucky, is sort of being the runner-up in this specific match. Is there anything with your list that you would maybe change? I am hard-pressed to think this is the last we've seen of the Thriving Turtle. So
I'll definitely bring him back in one of the following GPs, maybe in another tournament. I was actually trying to stick away from him because I was becoming so reliant on that turtle that I wasn't being all that creative in some of my decks, where I was just doing here I am again with the turtle, just swapping out one of the Bind the Monsters for a Piracy Charm, which is the blue version of that Funeral Charm there. And that was extremely optimal as well. But it will not be the last of that turtle. When
you say that, I've played this list a couple times, it's good and I know it, but I want to be creative. And I think that speaks really strongly to the community that's growing and in and around this format. Like there's a time and a place to be competitive and get in there, and if you really want to grind out the points, like you can definitely try to with rebuilding and resubmitting with the same style of deck. But it's also just really fun to bring something completely new up to bat, and we see that even just, for example, with our champion Delphi. Like, he's made this fantastic list here that we can't find many complaints with, and then he shows up each week with something new as well, just like most of the contenders. And I think that creativity that we've talked about throughout tonight has really just been emphasized throughout the format.
Yeah, and definitely next derby I will be bringing something nice and spicy in. I got a hot brew coming up.
There we go.
I like the idea of hot brews.
Yes, if you want to see that brew, join the Discord server.
Yeah, I will definitely be bringing a hot brew, pun intended, this time.
I think that's a great point that you bring up, Lucky, that, maybe you're just sort of getting into something like this, or you think it's sort of fresh and a sort of a fun take on Pauper, and you just kind of want to see more, but maybe you don't want to necessarily jump in. I know we've had some folks join the server and kind of do that, where they hang out for a derby or so, and they kind of see what the interaction is like. And you don't have to technically submit and be a part or be a contender in a current derby to sort of also get in on that conversation as well. I mean, this is sort of open for everyone on the Discord server. And so with that, yeah, I would agree and say absolutely, yeah. We welcome everyone to the Topdeck Lethal Discord server, where we do a lot of Pauper talk specifically, and a lot of derby stuff. And so I'm very excited to get some more folks sort of engaged with the format. It's been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, and I don't know how we haven't mentioned this before, but it's free. It costs nothing to join, so get in here.
That's true. It's a labor of love. We do it because we love it.
Many sleepless nights brewing, though. You get stuck in your head, and you're like, how do I make that one card work?
So our winner for today is going to be Puermeus, going 2-1 with the list that were submitted. This was first of all, congrats, and this was an awesome just group of submissions today. I really appreciate you guys sharing these lists. I do have a few questions regarding just sort of the format that I want to touch upon before we end today. Do either of you have any we mentioned a little bit before about using Scryfall. But do you have any other interesting tools or approaches that you want to share sort of regarding like the deck building for this format, or, just some tips for those looking to maybe potentially try it out other than joining the Discord and getting involved in that way?
Puermeus, do you have any ideas? Because I mentioned Scryfall. I got a little I can add after that.
Yeah, definitely Scryfall, as has been mentioned. And then I've also used the P5CB cube that was previously mentioned to help me with brewing and coming up with different novel interactions, and I found that to be helpful. But Scryfall really is the ultimate tool in building off of what other people have submitted and coming up with your own ideas based off little parts of the different engines.
Cool. I guess I can add a little shameless plug here myself. And say that I have devised a tool that I use for my own, not just for the derby, but for just regular Pauper deck brewing, which is I'm calling it the Cauldron. And what I found was I use Scryfall. I have a Scryfall tab open on every device, I think, every day of the week. But what I did find with Scryfall is that there's not, at least to my knowledge anyway, and I'm so excited to be wrong on this if it's the case, but I haven't found a way to sort of segment my searches to just Pauper staples, more or less, that we see kind of most utilized within the format. So within the format, if I'm not mistaken, I think now we're probably close to a little bit closer to 1,800 cards in the Pauper pool, whereas only roughly 900 or so are actually kind of used in most of the decks that we see played. So I've created a sort of another free resource and a document that is also linked within the Discord server that just has, it's a spreadsheet, and it just has those 900 or so cards, and it's a sort of living document that gets updated as new things come out that I think are worth brewing with. So
that's awesome.
Also, yeah, that sounds like that's up your alley. That's totally available.
Nice. The last thing I would suggest, just aside from tools, just maybe strategies. go on either the Cauldron, like Topsy said, or Scryfall, and just pick one card. At that point, you're already basically halfway done because you've got your color that you'll need, and you've got a card that you can build around.
Definitely.
Pick a couple staples and just submit it. It's super easy, and because it's free, you lose nothing doing it. You can only have a good time.
That's a great point. Yeah, the hardest part is just taking that first step, but the steps become easier to follow. So, yeah, well said there. Another question I think I had that I want to ask today is with regards to sort of your experience with this format and sort of the derbies we played thus far. Is there a favorite card that either of you have or each of you have that you've seen sort of in this format so far, and what would that card be?
Lucky, you want to start us off here?
Sure. I would say one of the most powerful cards is definitely Felden's Cane, like we've already blabbed on about for too long. It's powerful, and you'll definitely see it. I think one of my favorite cards that I've had the most fun using is Bind the Monster. It's cheap. You're only paying your life based on how tough that is. And you can take a terrifying Ulamog's Crusher and reduce it to nothing, only paying 8 life. One card that and a mechanic that I'm excited to see more of, and I think we'll see it showing up, is the level up mechanic. As you could have seen in some of those games, they can go on for a little bit. With only 5 cards, you're not generating these colossal board states. So using the level up mechanic in a card like Halimar Wave Watch, I saw that thrown around in the Underground, which is another sub game we play where it's just 1v1. You take that extra little bit of time and you can create 6/6 with Island Walks. I think there's also a white version of it, but I can see that being a up and coming staple.
Puermeus, what would you say would be sort of some of your favorites in the format so far?
It's a great question. Thanks, Topsy. So I think just the lands honestly have been my favorite part about brewing. I was a little bit disappointed to see when Land Destruction started coming into the format because I was definitely one of the people that was brewing with greedier mana bases. I think it's really intuitive and interesting when you get to play with bounce lands from Ravnica, or these really old lands like the depletion lands from Mercadian Rasks, or even some of these newer like utility lands, I want to say, like Mortuary Mire, which lets you buy back a creature from your graveyard. I think that having to find room for the mana that you need to make what you want to have happen can be very challenging, especially if you're brewing with something above 3 mana. And even going up to 3 mana can be challenging. So I think the lands have definitely been my favorite part about exploring this format. And if I had to pick one card that I am trying the most hard to find a home for and just really want to see played, it's Grazing Kelpie. I think that card has really great art. I have a soft spot for it. I think it could find a home in our format if we can figure out the right meta timing for it, the right pairings with it. But one of these days I'll find a submission for it. I'm looking. It's just for those who don't know, it's 4 mana, 2/3. You can sacrifice it to put a card from your graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. And since we don't have libraries, you could buy back threats or different cards, and it has persists, so it could potentially buy back multiple cards. And there's just it's one of those cards that screams break me, and so it, like the rest of this format, has been encouraging my creativity.
That's awesome. Great answers. I think those are some solid inclusions, and I would certainly hope to see more of those cards being utilized in the sort of coming weeks as well. So I think that's great, and that's also a lot of that's a really good good strategy to share for those that are up and coming that want to jump in, and maybe somebody likes the challenge of hearing that a certain card is favored and wants to sort of build around that and sort of break that card, and we would definitely encourage you to do so. So I think the last question that I have for today would just be, what's going on in your worlds currently? Is there anything in particular that either of you would like to shout out, share with the viewers as far as personal endeavors, streaming channels, tools, things that they could benefit, let us know what's going on. Let's start with Lucky.
So one thing I could shout out would be the bot that I created for this Discord server. Still a little bit of a work in progress, but what I would encourage is if you're have any kind of programming experience, check the GitHub out. I'm sure you can find an addition, create a pull request, make it better. Puermeus, do you have anything you want to shout out?
That's a great question. I've been racking my brain here, and I think the only thing that I have today that I can really shout out, as I'm just finding my way back into the Magic community these days, would be those cubes that I'm hoping to maybe get more involvement with and other people's input on. So I think, Topsy, you said you might put a link in the description here, and we might maybe get some discussion regarding them going on that Discord server. So definitely check out the Discord server. Everyone seems super friendly and open to discussing all things Magic, Pauper, etc. So yeah, thank you.
One last thing I'd like to shout out is Grey Havens in White Rock. It is objectively the best Magic store ever.
Yep, fantastic people. Love it there. Great people.
All right, awesome. I totally agree. And you know what? That's a great call out as far as the bot is concerned. Definitely give yourself some more credit there. The automated bot that is helping us run some of our 1v1 matches for 5CB format is absolutely killer. It looks great and has been working just awesomely. So definitely check out that GitHub. I will provide a link in the description for that as well. Yeah, does that shop do they do a lot of online stuff, or is it just kind of more of a local gig?
It's definitely a smaller local store, but they're an institution. They've been around for years upon years, and just a very welcoming community at that location.
Sweet. Well, yeah, awesome shout out. And if they have an online presence, a lot of us these days are ordering cards from Card Kingdom, which is another awesome shop. But consider they're giving them a try. Absolutely. With that, that's been our show. I just want to once again thank you guys for hanging out with me today. Puermeus LuckyScum, it's been an absolute pleasure having you sort of walk me through your builds or the builds of others, and just kind of giving folks that are watching a better idea of kind of what to expect with the format, and ultimately really putting the time in to like grow this format. And I think that's such a cool thing to see. So thank you guys again. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having us, Topsy.
Yeah, thanks, Topsy.
So that was our show. If you would like to become a guest on the show in a future episode of The Pit Stop, or would like to enter your own 5-card submission in one of our 5CB events, check out the invite link to our Discord server in the description of this video to get involved. All are welcome. We'd love to have you.